I live in Plum Coulee with my husband and my 2 kids, and I work at Garden Valley Collegiate as an educational assistant.
Are you originally from Plum Coulee?
No, I was born in Winnipeg, and I grew up in Low Farm, a little bigger than Plum Coulee.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about what prompted the writing of the book, In My Wake by Amanda Legault. Obviously, some books are written from a positive experience, and others are brought on by something that's not as positive. And for you, it started as, I'm sure, a very trying experience and has turned into something I think quite beautiful and inspirational. And let's begin with that day, the day of the collision, and when that was, and how this all began, how the story began.
Well, one day, on April 22nd, 2009, I was on my way to meet a friend for coffee in Altona, and then at the 201 and 306 intersection, I T-boned a semi. We were both going 100 kilometers an hour, and yeah, it took crews 1.5 hours to extract me because I was jammed under the trailer, and it was during massive spring flooding. And STARS Air Ambulance, they weren't in the province yet at that time, permanently, but they were called in just for the flooding. And without them, it would have taken hours to get to the health sciences, but it took them, I think 11 minutes or something to get me there. And yeah, it was the first of many major things that
came out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So leading up to the collision and then the moments immediately after it, do you remember much about those moments after the collision?
I remember nothing after because I was immediately unconscious. But my first thoughts after waking up, which was a few weeks later, was that I was dreaming a very vivid, ridiculous nightmare that wouldn't end.
And like you said, you were unconscious for several weeks after the collision. So let's maybe just give people an idea of how serious your condition was after the collision.
Well, I had collapsed lungs and massive head injuries and a broken neck. And then they had me in an induced coma for a few weeks so that I wouldn't move because I didn't have the, I guess, presence of mind to understand that I shouldn't move. And yeah, and then after I was stable, which was probably 3 or 4 weeks after the accident, I was transferred to rehab at Riverview in Winnipeg. And then I had to learn the basics of being a person again, like walking and eating and swallowing, using the bathroom, talking to people. Yeah.
Basically just like you were a kid again.
Right.
And
yeah,
relearning everything.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you remember coming out of the coma? Do you remember those moments at all?
I can't say that. I remember, or I just have in my head kind of just shots of, I don't know, a hospital room. I don't know where. I don't know if it was rehab or a hospital and I remember feeling like I was not really there, just a really long dream. A really long, really weird dream. That's all I kind of got out of the first probably month and a half of the whole thing. And
when were you able to talk or communicate with anybody after you came out of the coma? Was it a fairly extended period of time?
I would say probably about 3 weeks after the accident were my first words.
And what were those, and who were they to?
Well, they were pretty crazy. My pastor, he came quite often, and he was reading Bible passages to me, and I hadn't spoken to anyone at all since I woke up, but my very first words were, Jesus, Jesus, love Jesus, love Jesus. I don't remember it, but this is what people tell me. So.
And I think that really transitions us into the book,
right.
In My Wake. It's very clear that, like we mentioned at the beginning, this book came out of a very challenging place, to say the least. Something very traumatic, a collision like this, and the challenges you had afterwards with your rehab and reclaiming your life. But when did you get the idea to write a book about these experiences and what you've learned?
Well, after I was, rehabilitated and at home for quite some time, the whole thing felt like a movie in my head, but it had a really, really redeeming ending, and it needed to be shared. Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Do you remember, was it a case of you sat down and said, I'm writing a book, or did you just start writing passages or pages, and how did that begin?
Well, I first started writing it probably about 5 years ago, and I got like 20 pages in, and then I stopped. And then probably 3-4 years later, my friend told me, she's like, oh, there's this publishing contest. The deadline is in, 3 months, but finish your book, get it in there. So I finished it in 3 months, and then it was actually shortlisted, so like a runner-up, and the publisher told me you should publish this book. People will buy it. It's a good story. So that's how that happened.
So that's kind of how you decided to move forward with the book, was to get it into the contest.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what is the story of this book? Tell us a little bit about In My Wake and what you have written on those pages.
It starts in the moments before I was hit by an 80,000-pound truck, and then it takes readers through the rehab, and then there's flashbacks. Like when I started to remember tiny parts of myself, they were mostly or all really depressing, really crazy things, and all I could remember about myself was things that I hated. But then kind of at its height, that's when Jesus met me where I was, and he kind of took me through it from there. And yeah.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about that, Amanda, and how this book really is rooted in that idea that you were able to connect with Jesus and with God through this frankly terrible experience. And just talk about that and why you felt it was important to share that with others.
Well, I did a lot of ridiculous things as a teenager and young adult, and that kind of right up to the point of the accident, I just wasn't where I needed to be, and I kind of had forgotten about God. But then when this happened, even though I had massive head injuries and I didn't know left from right or anything, my first words were, love Jesus. And I don't remember this, but the Holy Spirit knows the utterings of your heart, and the first things that came out of my mouth were words I didn't even realize I was speaking. Like God is there. He's in everything all the time, and it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing, what you're thinking, he is there.
During your rehabilitation process and relearning everything, like you said, the most basic of things, were you ever discouraged? Despite, it sounds like you felt that Jesus and God were walking alongside of you. Were you ever discouraged where you thought, what's the point of this? Why am I even trying?
Every day was the worst day of my life. There was so much pain, not just physical pain, but, I was traumatized. It was awful. But I had a little girl. She was 18 months old. I had a fiance. And even though I didn't know anything else, I knew them, and I knew that I needed to try for them. Even though I didn't realize that this was real, like I was convinced that I was dreaming for the entire time. But even in that, I had this nudging to keep on going for them, and that nudging was God. I see that now. And
do you remember when you, I guess you could say, turned the corner, where things started becoming more positive for you, where you were starting to remember the good things about your life, your fiance, your daughter, and your family?
I probably, when I saw the outside world, there were the 4 walls of Riverview that were basically like hell to me. But then when I was able to go outside and see that there was more to the world than those 4 walls, I think that was kind of where I really started seeing things.
Mm-hmm. So when you look back at the book, which is soon to be out, it's coming out in March, correct, Amanda?
Yes.
That's correct. In My Wake is the name of the book.
Mm-hmm.
What are your favorite parts in it? I'm sure it's all your favorite, right? Because it's your book, it's all your words, it's your story. But what is a favorite or a favorite part from it?
Well, like I said, there was a lot of backstory in it, and I remembered things and whatever. But there was something that occurred to me that I needed to confess to my fiance at the time, Kyle. His reaction blew my mind, and it still does, and you'll have to read about it. But that is my favorite part.
Good. Now, obviously, the intent of writing a book is one, to share your story with readers, and two, to have readers actually read that story. What are you hoping people who purchase this book will get from it?
My only hope is that readers will be curious about the God that healed me and maybe give him a shot. Or if they have known him before or know him, that they will, turn back to him or consider it,
Now, obviously, you can learn a lot from an experience like this. Many, many things of which we could probably do a whole interview just on that.
Yes.
But what are some of the things, the most important things that you've learned from this experience of going through the collision and the rehab and ultimately writing that all down in the book In My Wake? That's a loaded question.
Oh, well, the most important thing, the reason that we exist, I believe, is to love God and to be loved by God and to to spread that, to tell people that, to let everyone know. And that is the whole point of any kind of trauma or anything is, God has a greater purpose for everything, and if we let him, he will take that and turn it into something beautiful. Even if we don't recognize it, that's what it is.
Well, we should wrap up here today by talking a little bit about specifics and when the book is coming out and how people who are listening to us today will be able to get a copy.
Starting the week of March 7th, it will be available at the Bible Bookshop in Winkler, co-op locations in Winkler and Morden, the Olive Tree in Morden, fine Christian bookstores, online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Chapters, Indigo, GreatCanadianAuthors.com, and it'll also be available via ebook, Kindle, Kobo e-reader, Apple Reader, and Adobe Glassbook.